Well, hello again, my fall Bible reading challenge friends. I am here today to give you a brief introduction to the book of Romans and Paul's epistles because we are getting ready to transition and start reading Romans. And then we're going to be reading all of the epistles that were written by the Apostle Paul. So, the book of Romans was written by the Apostle Paul around 56 AD. And remember, the Bible is not in chronological order. So, though it appears in the Bible as the first of Paul's epistles or letters to believers, it is actually the sixth letter written by Paul. And before we discuss more of the purpose and content of the book of Romans, I want to give a little bit more history on Paul, his life, his ministry, and an overview of the 13 epistles that he wrote, over 2/3 of the New Testament. Paul, or Saul as he was known before, was a Roman citizen and also a Jew by birth. He was of the stock of Israel, as it says, a direct descendant from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was from the tribe of Benjamin, the elite of Israel, and a Pharisee, and he was instructed in the law and Jewish traditions from childhood. He persecuted the early church and killed Christians. But we all know the story. One day, while he was headed down a dusty road, he had a life-changing encounter with Jesus. What the enemy meant for evil, God turned around for good, and he became the devil's worst nightmare. The Apostle Paul has been dead for over 2,000 years, but his words are still giving direction, strength, correction, insight, and encouragement to believers today. That is a pretty powerful ministry, I would say. Paul's conversion was around 35 AD and his death around 68 AD, making his ministry a total of about 33 years. He was an apostle, traveling to different cities and regions, winning souls, starting churches, teaching, correcting, and encouraging believers. He went on 3 or 4 missionary journeys, was imprisoned multiple times, stood trial before 3 powerful leaders. And that is just a brief summary of the Apostle Paul. And now a overview of the epistles, or kind of a just a timeline is basically what I want to give you. So if you hear noises in the background, my dog is inside. So so 1st and 2nd Thessalonians were written in 50 AD while Paul was in Corinth on his second missionary journey. 1st and 2nd Corinthians and Galatians were written between 55 and 56 AD while he was in Macedonia during his 3rd missionary journey. The book of Romans was written in 56 AD in Corinth at the end of his 3rd missionary journey. And then Ephesians, Colossians, Philemon, and Philippians were all written while he was in Rome in prison between 60 and 61 AD. 1 Timothy was written in 64 AD while living in his rented house in Rome. And Titus was written in 64 AD as well while he was traveling to Greece. 2 Timothy was written in 66 to 67 AD, shortly before his death during his 2nd Roman imprisonment. These were the best things that I could find. It was a lot more complicated than I thought. And trying to get straight answers on this, there's like a bunch of different timelines and things that vary slightly. So if you know something that I don't know, if I gave anything that was wrong information, I apologize. I did the best I could. Okay, and now I want to just do a very brief summary of the book of Romans. So as we start on the different epistles, I will give more of an overview and a background in each one of those, but I kind of wanted to just give a brief timeline so that we have it all in perspective before we begin reading these books that were all written by the Apostle Paul. So the book of Romans the full name would be the Epistle of Paul the Apostle to the Romans. When Paul wrote this letter to the church in Rome, he had already been traveling around preaching for about 20 years, but he had not yet been to Rome. He had founded numerous churches and was nearing the end of his third missionary journey. So the book of Romans, or Paul's letter to the church of Rome, is a mature statement of his understanding of the gospel. So this is kind of cool to know and insightful, right? The book of Romans is commonly considered the greatest exposition of Christian doctrine anywhere in Scripture. It contains an orderly, logical development of profound theological truths. Unlike the other epistles, Paul doesn't address specific local problems in the church in the book of Romans because he hadn't been there with them yet in person. But nevertheless, it contains rich, general teachings applicable to all Christians for all time. That means you, and that means me. The overall doctrinal theme that Paul seeks to demonstrate is that God is righteous, and that as Christians, we should strive to structure our lives after the pattern of his righteousness. And that's all I have for you. We'll see you next time.